Hey, group leaders. Just want to take a few minutes to go over what we covered in our last huddle in October. I just want to unpack for you what we unpacked there, which has a lot to do with what's coming up for groups and group related activities in the new year. And so, really, what I want to do is take a little bit of time to unpack what the big picture of kind of the vision, some of the changes that are coming, big picture for Lighthouse, and then where some of these group specific things fall into that big picture. And so to start with, I just want to unpack for you a little bit of the new vision for Lighthouse. This was unpacked more by John and Sammy a couple months back, I believe back in September, where they unpacked, hey, our new vision for Lighthouse is that we want to become a church planting church, that we want to be a church that sends people out to go start new works in other areas, new churches in other areas, that they might reach the lost and make disciples in a way that's not the same as maybe a campus is, where we've done campuses in the past. We've sent people out to do what Lighthouse does, just in a different area. A church plant would be sent out more to do a new work, whatever that area specifically needs. And so to be able to do that, to be able to be a church planting church, we need to be able to raise up leaders. We need to be able to train them, equip them, evaluate them, help work, come alongside of them so that we can send them out. And so because of that kind of big picture, we've got to make a few shifts to how we're kind of structured, what some of our focuses are. And so we really want to try to simplify things so that we can identify, train, equip, and send people out to start these new churches. And so just if I could just kind of share real briefly the big picture of how we kind of see the progression of things here at Lighthouse, it would be this, that we think, we really think in alignment with these 4 C's, that we want to help people move from curious to consistent to committed and then to commissioned. And so curious, that the things that happen for people in that kind of category of curious would be our Sunday worship services, whether that's online or in person. That's primarily where people who are curious about Jesus, curious about church in general, curious about Lighthouse specifically, they come to those services. And so that's primarily where we meet them. We want to help move them from just being curious about it to being consistent in their engagement in it. And the kind of thing that we offer that helps move people from curious to consistent is Starting Point. That Starting Point is a once a month thing that we do the first Sunday of every month. That is just an opportunity for people who are new or maybe new to wanting to take a next step can come to that event, and we can get to know them. They can get to know us a little bit. We can help make recommendations for them as to next steps to take. A lot of those next steps are centered around getting people into community, whether that's on a team or whether that's in a group or whatever it might be, that we want to help people get into a consistent community. And so that's where most of our group related activities fall, would be under that kind of consistent category, whether that's community groups or growth groups or freedom groups, whatever it might be. That's primarily where they fall, is under that consistent category. Now, we want to help move people from consistent to committed. And the thing we're going to do there is something called Growth Track. You've probably heard of Growth Track. It's primarily been an online thing that we've done. We're actually going to bring that back in person in a new way. And so I'm not going to get into all the details of that because that's not specifically what we're talking about right now. But Growth Track would be our thing that we provide that helps move people from consistent to committed. And things within the committed category would be serving or leading on a team, giving, partnership with the church, outreach. Those sorts of things kind of fit under that committed category. Now, for some people, committed is where they'll stay and live, but we want to find people who are ready to go beyond that and be commissioned to be sent out to start a new church or to help lead or be part of that process for a new church, or to take a new step of leadership even within our current congregation. And so to do that, we want to develop a leadership development course. It's currently in development. We're writing the kind of curriculum for that right now with the hope of beginning that in the fall of 2025. And so that's kind of the picture. We want to help move people from curious to consistent to committed to commissioned. and provide opportunities. Now, that's kind of the big picture. Now I want to talk about where do groups specifically fit in that, and what are some of the changes that we're going to have to make to be able to follow through with that. From a group's perspective. And so really the big picture for us from a group's perspective is we want to create rhythms. That one of the issues we've had of late is that we haven't had very good rhythms when it's come to groups. We've had midweek, we've had community groups, which run all throughout the year. There's no real start or stop point for those. We've had growth groups and freedom groups. They've operated on a semester schedule. But with this desire to move into a new kind of era where we are trying to help develop and draw out and encourage and equip leaders for all sorts of activities, whether that's groups or movement teams or starting new churches, we need a rhythm that helps provide that kind of clear pathway, a discipleship pathway to help people move along through that. So that said, let me just walk through our kind of 3 different types of groups and how they all fit into that. First, I want to start with freedom groups. That freedom groups are a very unique type of group. Many of you have been through freedom groups, some of you have led them. And I just want to be very clear that freedom groups are this kind of highly curated content that helps people walk through inner healing. It helps people walk through what's going on inside of them, the things that are blocking them from experiencing more of Jesus, of being more full of the Holy Spirit. And because of that, it's very highly curated. It's designed a certain way. It's got a very specific model to it. And we have no intention of messing with that model just because we might see it a little differently. That the model works and we want to stick with the model. And so part of that model is that to be able to lead a freedom group, you have to have attended a freedom group and have attended the conference that follows that group. To be able to then lead, the next step would be that you co-lead a group with somebody who's a leader. So you attend conference, you attend the group itself, then you co-lead with somebody, and then you're able to lead with a co-leader. We want to follow that model, and we're not going to make any more exceptions for that. We've made exceptions for that in the past. We're not going to do that anymore. We want to stick with the program because it works. And so really to understand that freedom, it fits into that overall discipleship pathway, that overall process and vision by providing a place for people to walk through and deal with what's going on inside of them. And so we want to provide a space to not only deal with head knowledge, not only deal with, learning more, but also deal with what's going on in the inside so that we can be emotionally and spiritually healthy internally as well as externally. That leads us to what we currently call growth groups, but we're actually going to shift the name of that from growth groups to courses. That we feel like courses is a better representation of what we want these types of group to be. Now, when it comes to courses, there's a few things specifically as well. Courses, the leaders for courses are going to be handpicked, trained, and equipped leaders and teachers. Not just anybody can apply to be a course leader. These are going to be people that we've raised up, that have gone through kind of our predetermined processes for becoming a communicator, a teacher of these courses, because we want these courses to be very specific in what they're training, what they're teaching. A lot of them are doctrinal, theological. And so we want to make sure that the quality there is of a certain standard. And so for those of you that are leading growth groups, we're going to make a little bit of a distinction in that there are certain things that are called a growth group now are not going to transition to being a course. So those things would be like divorce care, grief share, the hurting moms group. Those sorts of groups, which are more community, more care and community based, they're actually going to move under our regular groups umbrella. And what's going to stay under courses would be things like Financial Peace University, Faith and Practice. We're developing a course right now for understanding the Bible and one for missional living. And we're going to continue to add things to that courses catalog that would be things that are training, equipping, they're for learning. And so really, like even our prayer foundations group, that's going to be a course under there because it teaches how to pray. It leads to being able to be on the prayer team, that sort of thing. So courses, they fit into the overall vision, the overall picture by providing a place for people to grow in knowledge and understanding of God's truth. Whereas freedom is going to deal with what's going on in the inside and how we can grow internally, spiritually, emotionally. Courses are going to be dealing with how we can grow in truth. And so that's kind of the distinction there. Lastly, that leads us with what we currently call community groups, which we're just going to just call groups from now on. And this is probably where the biggest change is. Like I said, some of those, what were considered growth groups, are now going to be considered groups. And then everything that's currently a community group will be considered just a group. And so we're going to be having a follow-up huddle on November 10th that you're invited to. We would love to have you there. If you've got questions leading into that, please feel free to send those to Adrian. We would love to be able to answer those questions at that huddle so everybody can be on the same page and be clear moving into the new year. The biggest change when it comes to groups is that we're shifting from that model of community groups meet all the time, anytime, with no real start or stop date, to we're going to move back to a semester format. And one of the main reasons for that is that rhythm that I was talking about earlier. We want everything to be on the same rhythm because it provides a lot of clarity. As we're trying to develop leaders, as we're trying to invite new people into community, it provides a lot of clarity to go, all group types start on this date and they run for this semester length. And I'll get into some details about that in a second. But we really want to develop that rhythm. That rhythm helps us with recruiting new leaders. One of the problems we've had during this community group system, the always running system, is we've really struggled to find new leaders. Whereas previously in our semester system, that was not as much of a struggle. The nature of semesters provided a really easy on-ramp and off-ramp for not only new leaders to step up, but for current leaders to be able to take a rest. And because of this rhythm, now if you want to take a rest from leading your group, you can step into maybe a course or step into freedom because those things, freedom and faith and practice specifically, are going to be prerequisites for being able to join that leadership development, those leadership development courses. And so we want to give you opportunity to be able to take those prerequisites, to be able to continue to move into that leadership development if you so desire. Having a semester-based rhythm provides a clearer way for that to happen. And then really, it helps with new leader recruitment. It helps with you being able to take a break. It helps with you being able to step into the pipeline yourself. And it provides a lot of clarity for the congregation. We used to have these kind of staggered launches. It became really confusing. People didn't understand what was what. Now we can just say everything launches this date. It runs for this length. It makes it much simpler and clearer. One thing I will say about the semester base is if you're a group that doesn't like to necessarily take the breaks, you like to take the longer approach, you are allowed to continue to meet in between those breaks. There's just going to be certain things that we maybe as the group's team don't continue to support in those gaps because we want to create healthy rhythms of serving and resting. But you're allowed to continue meeting with your group. I encourage you, even maybe you don't meet every week, but maybe in the breaks you get together once or twice for a community type event. You hang out together, you eat some food, you have a good time, that sort of thing. That's totally allowed. And we want to provide easy transitions logistically from semester to semester where you don't have to completely restart your group page between every semester if you're just going to be continuing, that we want to provide a way for you to be able to easily transition, even your group page, your member roster, that sort of thing. Whereas in the past with semesters, that was a little bit of a hassle. We want to try to remove that hassle from you. So the question might be, okay, when is this starting? Well, we want to start this in January of 2025, that our spring 2025 semester will launch the second week of February. And so leading into January of 2025, we're going to be preparing all our groups in this transition as we build towards that. So again, freedom groups, courses, groups will all be launching and running together, which will kind of create this real synergy for the promotion of all of those groups, so it doesn't feel so disjointed. Now, that said, there are a few kind of things that might shift a little bit as well in terms of what we're talking about when we mean a group, specifically what is currently a community group. And so I just want to say it like this, that we've kind of made some shift to kind of the vision and the mission of those groups. And so this is how we would say it now, that these LH groups exist for people to become more like Jesus. That's their purpose. Quite frankly, that's always been their purpose. We used to say it more like they exist for people to take one step closer to Jesus. We're just rephrasing it to be a little more specific. We want these groups to run so that people become more like Jesus. How do they do that? Well, they become more like Jesus by practicing truth, worship, community, and mission with one another. And so the vision is we want to run groups so that people have a space to become more like Jesus. In a freedom group, that's become more like Jesus with what's going on in the inside. In a course, that's become more like Jesus by understanding God and understanding the world around us, understanding ourselves through learning. And in a group, it's learning to become more like Jesus by practicing those things with one another. That we want to practice truth, worship, community, and mission. Those are the four values of Lighthouse Church. And we also believe they're the four rhythms of growth for each believer. This is what that growth track that I referred to earlier is going to be based around, is talking about these four rhythms. That we need truth and we need worship, that we need to learn what's true, but we need to worship by actually doing it, by actually putting it into practice. That worship isn't only singing. Worship is willingly following Jesus with our whole heart, mind, soul, and strength. And so it's learning truth, it's applying truth, it's speaking truth, and then it's doing truth, which we would consider to be worship, that we need both of those things in balance. And it's groups, it's the group environment that provides a space to practice both truth and worship with one another. But not only that, we want to add in a rhythm of community. That community is that place where we can build one another up. We can support each other. We're putting each other first. We're making a commitment to one another to be authentic with one another. We want to practice that rhythm. We want to practice practice the 59 one another's of Scripture, that we want to love one another, support one another, comfort one another. We want to cry with one another, mourn with those who mourn, and comfort those who need comfort, and celebrate with those who celebrate. And we want to live that out. We want to one another, and groups provide the environment to be able to practice that rhythm. And then lastly, we want to incorporate the rhythm of mission, that we want to make an impact on the community around us and further the movement by raising up new leaders. Groups are an environment where we can practice the rhythm of mission. We can practice the four rhythms of truth, worship, community, and mission. Because groups are the training ground. They're the practice space. There's a book I read called Practicing the Way of Jesus. He refers to churches as dojos, that they're Jesus dojos. They're places where you go to practice being like Jesus. And so community is the place where we go to practice being like Jesus, where we train truth, we train worship, we train one another, we train making an impact on the world and furthering the kingdom by raising up new leaders. Groups are the space where we get to do that. And so here's some expectations of our group leaders now. We want you to commit to leading one semester at a time. Okay? We just want you to take one semester at a time. Sure, you may lead multiple semesters in a row. You may even lead through the breaks. We just want you to make a commitment one semester at a time and let the Holy Spirit lead in between those semesters as to what you should do. Whether maybe you do need to pause, maybe you need to take off completely for a while, maybe you need to step into a course, or taking faith in practice, or freedom, or something to that effect. We want you to lead with the intention of helping people in their apprenticeship to Jesus, to become more like him. We want you to be intentional about helping people take that next step closer to him, helping them practice truth, worship, community, and mission by being intentional about creating space for that. We want you to facilitate the 4 rhythms of LH groups: truth, worship, community, mission. That you're there not necessarily to just teach all the time. You're there to facilitate conversation. You're there to facilitate environment and facilitate the rhythm so that people can work all 4 of those into their life, because that's how they change. That's how they become more like Jesus. And that's how your group stays healthy, is by operating in all 4 of those rhythms. And so you might be, maybe you lead divorce care or grief share or hurting moms, one of those kind of groups, and you're going, well, I don't know how I would incorporate mission into our thing. That's just not how it's built. I hear you. Can I just walk through what this might look like for a group like that? That for a group like that truth and worship, that's the curriculum. That's learning the curriculum. Those are, again, highly curated curriculums. They're designed a specific way to teach specific content. You don't have much control over that. And so it's learning and applying the curriculum that's being taught. That's truth and worship. Community is caring for one another. It's space to support one another. It's praying for one another. And then the mission may not be that you're going out to serve your community. The mission is simply you're being intentional about looking for, is there somebody else in this group who maybe has the potential? God, the Holy Spirit's leading me to see that they might have the potential to one day lead this group themselves. And I can start bringing them alongside me and raising them up. That's mission. That's being missional. That's going, hey, there's more to be done. There's other communities that need this. There's other days of the week that need this content, that need this group, and other people in other areas. And so I want to help raise people up to be able to take it to those new areas, those new days of the week, so on and so forth. That's mission. For those that are community group currently, truth and worship would look like Bible study. Maybe it's singing worship, but it's obedience, it's application, it's taking what you've learned. It's not just being taught at or you being the teacher. It's how can you provide content, provide truth, and then provide opportunity to do something with the truth, because that's when it really sinks in and takes root. For community, it might look like having fun nights that aren't maybe curriculum based. Maybe it's taking a night to play games or to go out to dinner or to have kind of a family night, that there's opportunity for that. And then for mission, it might be serving the community. It could be raising up leaders like we talked about. It could be participating in one of our outreach opportunities that are kind of given to you. Our outreach director, Marjorie, does a great job of curating these outreach opportunities and then providing them very easily for your group to participate in, that your group would commit to participating in something like that. That's the way it could look. Ultimately, there are churches that operate in this rhythm, and they do it highly intentionally. And I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm just saying this is what it could look like for you, is that maybe you take it kind of month by month throughout the semester, and you go, you know what? 2 nights of every month are going to be discipleship. They're going to be truth and worship kind of nights. They're going to be learning and applying. 1 night of every month is going to be community focused. We're going to take time. We're going to play a game. We're going to go out together. We're going to go bowling. I don't know, whatever you want to do, that you do something that's very community oriented. And then 1 night of the month is mission oriented, that you're planning to do an outreach project together, or you're going to make an impact in your community somehow. Now, maybe it doesn't need to be that structured. Maybe you just go, you know what? 2 times throughout the semester, we're going to do mission, and we're going to have 2 community nights, and the rest are going to be truth and worship. That could be totally fine too. The point is that you intentionally and prayerfully think through, how am I going to facilitate all 4 of these rhythms in my group so that I can help people become more like Jesus by practicing truth, worship, community, and mission with one another. That's what we want to see in our groups in the coming semesters and years to come, is that people are able to become more like Jesus by practicing the rhythms of Jesus, truth, worship, community, and mission with one another. And so I assume you probably have a bunch of questions. We would love to hear those questions so that at our November 10th meeting, we can take the time to continue to clarify and unpack for you more of what some of these changes look like and how you fit into it. But if I can just be really honest with you, you fit into it in a big way. We need you as a leader. We love you as a leader. We want to see you continue to develop as a leader and step into your gifts. And so we want to come alongside you in a lot of different ways to be able to help develop you and walk alongside you so that you can build community in whatever one of those areas you're called to. I love you guys. Can't wait to see you on November 10th.